Welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heartbeat of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, the RunninRev, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore stories that go beyond the pavement. In this episode, I am joined by Mak Foss. Mak is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and what a great conversation we had about that community in Grand Rapids, about the track club running team that she leads and co-leads with other folks, the Society Track Club, and just all of these amazing things that have been built out of her experience of finding identity as a runner. And so this is such an amazing perspective and conversation that really opens that box of how we relate to one another and how we as runners, no matter how fast we are, no matter what we think our pace means in the grand scheme of things, but how we do this thing called running together, how we can motivate one another. So let's jump into this conversation. All right, welcome in, everybody. We have another great guest coming in. We're joined by Mak Foss, which is amazing. Part of the Grand Rapids, so we're back in Michigan again. So, Mak, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Yeah, don't overlook Michigan. I mean, flyover state, no way.
You know, I think one of the great things in this connection is I've always been a fan of like the Detroit Free Press Marathon. I've always found it like unique and interesting. But then when you think of Michigan, you often then it's kind of like the same thing of thinking like running in Massachusetts, like everything's around Boston, or like running in New York, everything's around New York. But then, you know, most of the people now that I've had from Michigan, which is almost all of them, have been Grand Rapids folks. So this is always fun to see, especially because our communities, they can be anywhere and everywhere. So, you know, let's get started and jump into that conversation. Mak, what is your community and what makes your community awesome?
Yeah, so it's funny you bring up the Detroit Free Press because I do have to like start out with saying that my community definitely goes beyond Grand Rapids. Not only do I travel for work, but I also just like love meeting people, whether that's obviously in person when I'm traveling, but also I've met a lot of people just through like my online community. So I have a lot of like incredible, supportive, inspiring friends that are from Detroit and from the east side of Michigan, like Sabrina and Tommy Runs, Rashard and Silas, and those groups that are huge and being built over there, right? Like the We Run 313 and Running for Brews and the Sparkling Sundays. So, and I also have connections and communities over in cities like Denver. So like shout out the Good Boys Run Club and Val over there. But my primary community here in Grand Rapids is called the Society Track Club. Honestly, it's awesome because it's more than just a group of runners. It's really a family. It fosters connection, accountability, growth, and our team really rallies behind each other. We aim to make an impact. We have initiatives like STC Shoe Bank, where we're trying to hook maybe students and kids up who don't necessarily have the means to get their own running shoes with shoes. We also volunteer races, local charities. We try to reflect our commitment to giving back to others. And we also don't care if you're aiming for a BQ where you're trying to go sub-3 or simply just finishing your first race at whatever distance it is. We just, you know, we want to build a collective success, and that's really great. And from training runs, we have movie nights. We go together even to watch a 5th grade play. And my community is so much more than getting miles in together, right? Like we're here through all aspects of life. And that's what I really love about it. That's why I think it's awesome.
And so what in your journey kind of led you to this? You know, how did you get here where now you're a part of this run club, you know, group, coaching group, all this stuff? How did you get there? What brought you to this point?
Oh my gosh. I was never a runner. Honestly, no, I was a cheerleader through and through. I even cheered in college. And I was the one who, if there was any running involved, I would hide in the bathroom. It was just not a thing for me. But after the pandemic in like 2021, it was kind of, I really craved that social interaction. And I found a random Instagram post that was like, hey, come to this all women trail running group. It's no drop. And that I was like, oh, okay. I think like if it's no drop, like I can try to run, like I can try to do it. And So I showed up there and there was a woman there and she was just going on and on about how cool the Chicago Marathon was. She had just run it because this was Halloween 2021. And she was saying like she was taking shots on the way and was hugging everyone and high-fiving and like all of this cool stuff. And I was like, oh, that sounds way less like torture and way more fun, like a party. So immediately after that, I actually signed up for a marathon. So my first run was my first ever introduction to signing up for a marathon and jumping right into it. And basically, I built my entire first training block for that marathon and developing myself as a runner by going to every run group that I could find and basically just making it always hanging out with friends. And that kind of got me into this aspect. And then because I have a background in competing and the competitiveness, it kind of naturally turned into, okay, maybe I can set some different goals, different types of goals and work at those in a more competitive way, but still keeping that social aspect.
What were those beginning days like? You talk about meeting this one person and them getting you involved. So how did you go about finding groups to run with? Because clearly the communal aspect is something that really brought you in, gave you that motivation. So how did you go about finding groups?
Yeah, I was actually so awkward, honestly. Like I think people think because I am very outgoing and obviously now I have a pretty big hand in the running community and again, meeting people that, it must have been really easy for me, but it wasn't. I found them by word of mouth after going to that first one and also just social media and things like that. But I showed up my second run group I ever went to. So I went to that one on Halloween. The next one I went to was another local run group here and it was at 6 a.m. and it was on my birthday. And I showed up and I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't tell anyone it was my birthday. I ran with headphones in and I was so intimidated because I felt like they were so fast. And I was like, what if I can't keep up? And I was like, what if I can't breathe? I don't know how. At that point, I barely knew how to talk while I was running. And I probably had to show up to that run group and a few other ones for a couple months before I finally like actually took part in the social aspect. And either stuck around afterwards and had coffee or actually took my headphones out and started talking to people because it was just a new concept to me. And also like, obviously when you go into that, there's self-doubt there, right? Like everyone fast is so relative, but everyone going into like a new run group or going into running, even with just a few people have the worry of like, what if people are judging me because I'm breathing heavy? Or what if I can't talk? Or what if it's too fast for me? And so I had all of those same, doubts and worries in my head as well.
And to say like, even for the outgoing folks, there is that sort of stigma around, how am I going to fit into this group? So as you continue to go to these run groups and go to these run clubs and go for group runs and all that stuff, what was the community around you? What were the other folks? How were they interacting? And what were some of the ways that those walls began to break down?
Yeah, they were honestly really nice. People did try to talk to me, but like I said, I showed up in headphones and I was a little bit shy and kind of like in my own bubble. But I tried, honestly, it's a two-way street, right? Like, I think a lot of people put pressure on whoever is running run clubs. And I've had this conversation with Richard, who runs Running for Brews. They put a lot of pressure on the people running the run clubs to connect each other and like, hey, this person has similar interests or a similar background. You should meet Joe or something. And I think it's important to remember that like, you do have to put yourself out there a little bit. And so I did. I kind of like, I watched how people interact. And then, I stayed after a few times. I was like, okay, today is the day. I'm going to stay after and I'm going to get coffee at this run club. And I just sat down and I inserted myself in the conversation. They were talking about books. I don't necessarily read a ton, but I was like, I know a book I can contribute here. And, just like little things like that. And then as time went on and I became more comfortable with my identity as a runner in the running community, I was able to connect more with people that fit my lifestyle, fit the things that I was interested in. And everyone in the running community is so nice and a little weird, right? Like we're all a little weird. And I think that's important to remember when you go into these groups is like runners, like we're choosing to run for fun. Like that's weird. So it's okay to like show who you are and open up a conversation and be authentic, like you are going to be received well.
And then, I mean, even just to name that, when we think about community, like each expression of community, whether it's running community or another kind of community, to fit in within that niche. And one of the things that you said that I often latch onto is to feel like a runner. Because a lot of times there's that hesitancy of like, you're running, like you're practicing the sport, the thing of running, the activity of running, and yet not feeling like a runner. And I think that's a big thing about our communities, is making folks feel like not only are they welcome in our communities, but they're also runners. And whether they run or whether they walk, even like we often get it here. We call our run club is called Run Samo. And they were like, well, we should call it Move Samo for the walkers. And I'm like, nah, like the walkers, they're runners. Like, let them enjoy that. So what's it been like for you now, thinking back on that, of claiming that title of, I am Mac, I am a runner. And to play that role into being a part, feeling accepted, I guess to say, in the running community.
Yeah. And that is a weird transition too, right? Like I don't know. It's like, I don't necessarily know if it comes with speed or it comes with like experience, right? Because like I've only been running for 3 years, and even sometimes I'm not necessarily like, yeah, I'm a runner, right? Like, because I always attribute it to like, oh, well, sometimes I think of like the runners as ones who are doing these insane things, or they've been running their entire lives, or like types of that. But I think for me, feeling embedded into the conversation or into the community was more so making conversations around who I was as a person. And I still try to do that when I meet someone who shows up to our run club or shows up to run with me for a little while. I try to make the conversation not about like, what races are you signing up for? How long have you been running? It's more so like, what do you like to do when you're not here? Do you have any cats? Like, do you like coffee? Right?
Love coffee.
Right. Things that identify them beyond just like this one hobby. Because I think like we try to stress in the running community that you put on a pair of running shoes, you go out, even if it's a run walk, even if it's just a speed walk, like you're a runner, you're an athlete, like you are doing something that is bettering yourself and adding to our community. So therefore, like, I want to know who you are beyond that. Because in my head, you're already a runner. You showed up to this club, you're a runner. You like to run. Or maybe you don't like to do it, but you're figuring it out, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I think, and I mean, we all have it, for listeners, yeah. I'll invite you to remember back when I recorded with Raz out of California, and he talks about, his blog is called Running Sucks. And he says, I mean, running sucks, but it also like doesn't suck.
Yeah.
But, it's always like that weird balance of life and expectations, because we never want anybody to feel excluded from the community, especially because of what running means. Like, I can't control your running. You run, just you do it. I can't control it. I can tell you to stop, but even at that, you have to listen to me. And so even to tell someone they're not a runner almost comes with the implication of having that sort of exclusive idea, exclusive understanding. But inviting them to be a part of the running community, no matter what speed they're going. How do you think that the running community at large, the global, the national, international running community can be better about really looking at people as runners and helping them to know and to understand that?
Yeah. It's so tricky. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I have a lot of conversations with leaders of other run clubs, and something important that I've taken away from it is like, you can say that you are open and inviting to all types of runners, all types of people and paces. But are you? Like, I was told to ask yourself, like, if someone truly showed up, if you are inviting everyone, all people, all paces, all walks of life to your running groups, your running communities, are you actually prepared if someone shows up? Are you like, are you ready for that? Like, does that make you feel some type of way? And I think just like keeping that in mind, and honestly, it's just about building each other up too. I think a lot of it also comes from like self-doubt, right? Like, cause I remember when I met my current partner, actually, it's funny. When I first met him, he showed up to a run and I looked at him, and just off the bat, because of what he was wearing, and I was in like an oversized sweatshirt, just some leggings I got off of maybe Meyer, I don't know. And I had my running belt on. It was my biggest run for my first marathon. I was so pumped. And he showed up just like looking like a legit runner. And it's like, how do we combat that idea? It's not about the way you look. It's not about your pace. It's not about how long you've been doing it. It's just like, this is a sport that you can go and walk out your door and start doing. Like, how can we make sure that we are fostering an environment in a community where like everyone feels safe to do so, welcome to do so, and confident enough to do so? So I think those are really important pieces.
And that's where a lot of times I feel like, especially as a run leader myself, that we run leaders sometimes often will take advantage. And now my mind is thinking about those questions that you just kind of posed is, when folks are showing up, how are we prepared? And even thinking about things that my run club has done in the past to make folks feel welcome. But, is that far enough? And making those folks know and understand, hey, you are truly welcome here and welcome in the way that you're practicing this sport. You don't need to be as fast as XYZ to feel included in this area. And what that means to practice that in what we do. And so I feel like this transitions us to where this society track club and this running team and this group that you've begun to build up, because it feels like to me and looking through, what y'all post on Instagram and how y'all hype one another up and get things going over there, it feels like a lot of these experiences that you've had in local run clubs and local run groups has trickled into this running team and this running group that you have over here with Society. So can you tell us a little bit about Society Track Club, what y'all do, how you guys are fostering community, how y'all are building that up?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like it is still such a learning opportunity for me right. I am trying my best and I get feedback all the time. And I'm sure like we're trying to create an environment where everyone feels welcome. And I'm sure that's not always the case. Like I'm not perfect. Our people who show up aren't perfect. Like we're trying to figure out how to best do that. But what it started as, and I think like this is truly what I wanted at the core when starting to like build this, is like I said, I kind of came into running later on in life, and I did struggle trying to find my place and feel like a runner. But I also really wanted to set some goals. Like I had done my first marathon, and I really thought that in my head, I was like, I think I can set a time goal. Or I think I can push myself a little bit. And I got a coach, and I started having to do these track workouts. And that was really intimidating because I didn't feel fast enough to go on the track. And I didn't feel like I had built my whole running foundation on being with people, and nobody wanted to go to the track because everyone still felt the same way as me, where they were like, oh, nah, like that's not really how I run. I don't do track workouts. Like I'm not a real runner, quote unquote. And so I started planning these, I called them just like track days, and it was just me and my coach. And I would just invite the community to come to like an all-inclusive track workout where like, it was very beginner. There was lots of breaks. Like I brought water, and the coach would like lead everyone through almost like a high school type of practice. But it was something where like, if you had never run on a track before, you had maybe never run more than a mile at a time before, like you could do this track workout. And from there, it just kind of built into like this. It was so cool to see people being like, oh, I get it. Like I can do track workouts based on effort. It's not about how fast you run. It's like the effort you give in those short amount of time. and like, oh, this is a track workout. And selfishly, I liked having people to run my track workouts with because I wasn't alone. And that was what I loved about running. And that kind of developed into Society Track Club. And it started as we would just host once a month these track workouts, all inclusive, all paces. And I mean, even walkers, right? Like some people would come and just walk the track. Some people would come and do maybe 400 and then walk the rest, and then maybe another 400. Like it was kind of choose your own adventure. There was a workout provided. It was on a whiteboard. You could, a coach was there so that you could ask him questions about how to modify if you're injured, or like, hey, I have X, Y, and Z going on in life. Like, I don't know what I should be doing in this sense. And he would kind of walk everyone through it and still provide some one-on-one there so that people could have an introduction to track workouts and also come to the realization, like, track workouts for everyone. Like you don't have to be quote unquote as fast as you think someone fast is. Like if you can give a little bit more effort, you're doing a track workout, you're doing a running workout, right? Like it doesn't matter the pace. And that kind of, then I went to actually Denver, and I found Good Boys Denver Run Club there, and they had a team attached to it. And I thought that is so cool, because I was just thinking to myself, and I was like, I'm not fast enough to get on a real team. Like, I'm just not. That's not my lifestyle. I can't dedicate my life to training. Like, I have a day job. I've got cats to take care of. Like, there's so many things going on, right? And I was like, there needs to be a running team for a normal person. Just a person who wants to feel like they belong to something. And it's more than just showing up once a week. It's like you feel like you're a part of a high school team again, where like it's one for all and all for one, and like someone's supporting you no matter what. And I really watched this just like come to life, where like people of all ages. I mean, like I said, last weekend, we went to one of our teammates' fifth graders' plays, and we all sat in the row and watched her perform The Lion King. And like we're brought to tears because her kid feels like our kid now, because we're so close. And if someone runs a marathon and it's attainable, we're all taking a road trip to go either participate, to crew, to cheer. Like we're all there, and we're having pasta the night before. Like it's just, that is the feeling that we wanted to foster, is like the feeling of being a part of like a high school or a college team without having to sacrifice our family life, our professional lives, and also having to meet a standard, right? Like we have people who have been on the team who have never run a marathon, and they were just, all they wanted to do, they became runners, and they were like, I kind of want to train for a marathon. Cool. That's an amazing achievement. Like just finishing a marathon. Like there is no time standard to get on the team. All we ask is that you want to be a part of the community. Like you want to be a part of volunteering, of going to these outside of, Thursday runs. Like you come to practice, you are active and you're supportive and you're a good person, and that's it.
For you to allow that idea of, I want to create an atmosphere where people feel like they can train where they're comfortable. For you, how important has that been in your running journey? Oh,
so important. A little bit about my background is I was a college cheerleader, and then I kind of got into like the bodybuilding realm, and then I suffered with an eating disorder, and I recovered from that. I went to recovery, and I didn't start running until I was in a really good place with that. But maintaining a healthy relationship with running is really, really important for me. Like being able to have balance and not go overboard with training, and maintaining a healthy relationship with becoming so like all in. I don't know how to explain like a good term for that, but not like get so head deep in it, is so important for my health in general. But also like, I love my job. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. It's kind of demanding. And I also eventually do want to start a family. And like I said, I have 3 cats. Like got to take care of them. And I also want to make sure, again, this is kind of back to that, like maintaining a healthy balance. Like I don't want my identity to be lost if I get injured. Like I want to be part of a community that if I were to have a stress fracture or I needed a season off, that I would lose my community. And that is kind of why and how I want Society Track Club to work is like, if there are things going on in your life that have to take precedent over running, you still have us because your identity is not just in being a runner on this team. It is in being a part of our family and being an important part of the entire community of Grand Rapids and of, the US and things like that. Like, you are more than just your ability to run. And whether that means like we tell people like you can show up and bike at our run club if you want. If you just want to bike alongside the runners, we typically have bikers. If you want to go for a walk at our club, that's fine. We had we had a runner who got injured in free press. And so we had our first track workout and we had her kind of host a recovery workout. So basically a lot of stretching, a lot of like body weight squats, things that like people could do if they didn't want to do the track workout, but they still wanted to come and be a part of the community.
As someone who is currently in an injury cycle, I see that as something because it's so dangerous when a lot of your mental sort of ability is focused in one activity. Right. And I think that becomes a danger. And I appreciate your vulnerability in talking about, your own disorders, because I think a lot of times when we see things like eating disorders, it's very real. It's very tangible to look and say, how it overpowers you, how it takes over your life and all of these things where it's something that is genuinely unhealthy for you. But it's also something because that same mentality can go into things that are healthy for you, like running, right? If we can bring those dangerous habits of overcommitting, of going too far, of wrapping our self-identity in XYZ, that then becomes the outlet that replaces it, right? And I think we can probably see, for a lot of folks, even that, unfortunately, the connection between eating disorders and, physical movement activities like running is, astronomically high.
Oh, yeah.
But how we conduct that, how we make ourselves a healthy person and have I love what you said, maintaining a healthy relationship with running. So as you're leading Society Track Club and you're leading this running crew, and it's way more than, seemingly how it seems like from how you've talked about it, it's way more now than just people meeting at the track, doing workouts, having fun together. You talk about it like it's a family, which again, like we have heard numerous times on this podcast, which is great. So for you, as you're looking at this, what are you all doing? You as leaders, and do you have any co-leaders in this thing? Or?
Yeah. Yep. We have two captains. Yep. We have two captains, Nora and Noah. Yep.
So as y'all are leading this thing, what are y'all doing on that mental side to help folks? Because as a team and as a track club, I look for a lot of our running communities, hopefully to develop these same strategies. What are you doing for that mental side? How are you helping folks adapt, cope, let them know, hey, running is not all inclusive of your identity. Even so, I've heard like coaches telling athletes, like, I cannot say you will not get injured, right? You will get injured. There will be a time you have to take. So what are you guys doing now as you're working with these athletes to help them understand that mental side of running so that they don't lose their identity in it?
Yeah, I think part of it, at least on the team side, is we do have a little bit more closer contact with our athletes, right? And I know that Nora and Noah and I will reach out if we do see something, right? Like, let's say someone's maybe overtraining or there's not enough breaks, or we see someone struggling. Like it's very, I wouldn't say it's always easy, but there are times where like you notice it when you know people, you start to notice like, hey, I think they might be getting lost a little bit here. And so there's private conversations that happen where it's like, hey, like, we just want to check in. We just want to check in and see. We do one-on-ones where we'll reach out and just say like, hey, just want to see like what's going on. Like, are you okay? Like, hey, I saw this posted somewhere, like you had a Strava status that this run didn't go well, or, I saw that maybe you're having a little bit of pain. Like, just a reminder, like, it's okay. It's okay to take a week off. It's okay to not to quit. Like it is okay to take a step back and quit a marathon. It is okay to quit the team. It is okay to decide that right now you need a break. And I think that is something that we've learned has been a little bit taboo, is the idea of taking a step back or quitting feels like it has to be a huge deal when it doesn't. Like, and we've had a few members of our team say like, hey, like right now just isn't the right time for me. Like they're building a family, they're moving, there's injuries and potentially like realigning life and figuring out what's next for them. And there's some people who are just overwhelmed by running. Like they just maybe put a little bit too much on their plate and it's not a priority right now. And it like, we've been able to sit down with those people and say like, it's okay. Like you're still a part of the family. You're still like, we're still friends. Like you still can come around whenever you want. Like it doesn't mean that you are cutting yourself off from us because you no longer want to run or you can't run at the amount that or the capacity that you were running before. And on top of that too, I think that a lot of it is around conversations, right? Like it's at Society on Thursday nights, we talked about eating disorders when it was eating disorder month. We did kind of make that a point to talk about that and to kind of like, we tried to advertise like healthy training habits and lead by example and have conversations around if someone shows up who's new, Noah or I will try to always be the last person in our run club to finish our group run on Thursdays. Just so that because someone has to be last, right? No one likes to be last, but someone has to be the last one to finish. And if we can take on that burden, might as well. And also like when I'm doing that, I try to have conversations around like, because I've had people say, well, oh, this must be so slow for you because you're fast. And I'm like, that's so relative. Like, this is nothing for me. Like, I like running with you. I like talking to you. I'm here to have a conversation and hang out with you, not to run the fastest, 4-mile loop that I can. Like I'm not trying to do that. I'm here to have a social run and to have a good time. And I'm good with this. This is not horribly slow for me. Like this feels like a normal run for me. I think, that sometimes gets lost.
When I was trying to go for a really big PR in the half marathon, I remember my running coach who has all these running accolades and he would do 400 repeats with me. And we would get to like repeat number like 8, 9, 10, and I would just be dog tired. And I remember one time I just looked at him and I said, Ryan, this is like an easy pace for you, isn't it? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, then why are you doing it? He said, because it helps you. Right. And I've tried to take that perspective too, of just like, there are times where, we can hang back and to recognize as runners, I can get my workout in. Yeah. And especially when I'm in good shape, when I'm not injured, and I have a lot more ability in my body, like, yeah, I can run with you. And like I tell the kids that I coach, it's, they're all gung ho and, I'll put in like 7 or 8 miles on a Monday when I'm coaching them and it'll be nothing for me. Right. I'll put in like 4 or 5 miles on my own and like 2 or 3 miles with them. And, a lot of the parents will find out and they'll be like, well, how do you do it? I said, I get in what I need to get in, but it's also important for me that they have someone who can set an example of, this is what it looks like to do this. This is what it looks like to lead from the front. And, I often think about, you didn't say it, but it came to my mind of, sometimes there are times where you can put community over self, right? Because you've done X, Y, and Z, because you've cared for yourself and because you're in a place where you're comfortable with running, right? You have a healthy relationship. To yourself, it's like, hey, running a 12, 13 minute pace, like for me, the enjoyable, it's the mental enjoyment, right?
Yeah.
It allows me to have fun while I'm running. And I mean, what a great thing to offer a community. I guess the big thing is just like, it's so hard for other folks a lot of times, like the folks that we're doing this stuff with when they're new, right? This circles back around to the beginning of our conversation where we talked about feeling like a runner.
Yeah.
How do you get away from that comparison game? I intentionally, a lot of times, I try not to know times. I mean, I like to know times because it's cool to celebrate, PRs. It's cool to celebrate awesome efforts and all of those things. But it's also just like, how do you, Mac, not get caught up in the comparison game of saying, well, she's quicker than me. There's no way I can keep up with him, especially as someone who's leading from the front in a lot of this as well.
I mean, here's the thing is like, to be so honest and saying this is like, we're human. Like if I were to say like, I don't get wrapped up in the comparison game, that would be a lie.
Oh, it would.
That would just be a lie, right?
Yeah.
I try to have conversations with myself that I don't know what people are feeling. Like, I just don't. Like, I don't know. Like someone, let's say I'm running with a group of 5 of my friends, right? We're just doing a 5-mile run, or maybe we're doing a tempo run. And it seems like one of my teammates is having just such a better time than me. In my head, I try to have an internal conversation with myself and remind myself, like, you don't know that. You don't know what they are feeling inside. You don't know how this run actually is for them. You are making an assumption. And then I also try to remind myself that, like, for instance, like I had a really bad day at Indy Half. I was supposed to take it like it was a workout, but I wanted to work down past my marathon pace and I just couldn't. And I ended up stopping. And I have never come to a complete stop at a race. I've obviously hit the bonk for a marathon and like kind of wobbled my way through. Right. But like, I've never come to a complete stop, and I came to a complete stop and I was so angry at myself. And like, I just kept going to a place of like, so-and-so wouldn't have done this. So-and-so could do this. Why can't you do this? And it's like, I had to remind myself that when it all was said and done, like that time that I got having a really bad day, like someone looked up to me that day and said, wow, I wish that, like, I hope someday I can do that. And not even just that, but like thinking about how far I've come, like the pace that I ran that half at and that I want to run my marathon at is a pace that I couldn't even hold for 2 miles 2 years ago. And so I just try to have those conversations with myself, but that's not to say that like it doesn't happen. Like the comparison game does happen, but I try, like, honestly, I have real conversations with my coach because there are times where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm just not as fast as so-and-so, or I feel like I couldn't have done what so-and-so did. And he goes, well, whose race is it? Like, is it theirs or is it yours? Like, what are you training for? Is it their running or you're running? Like, and that's such like a good perspective that like we forget when we're like, but the thing is like, you're always going to have someone who's faster than you. And you're always going to have someone that's slower than you in life, right? Like just in the world, there is someone who will say to you, oh, I can't even run 1 mile. Like, you know, those jokes people get when they find out you run. But also like even the fastest people that I know, there's always someone faster, like an Olympian, right? Like, and we're also like, I try to come to this like level set with myself of like, you're not getting paid to do this. No one is paying you to show up at your local 5K and try to PR. Like no one's paying you to run your run clubs during the week. No one's paying you to do your tempo run on Tuesday and your track workout on Thursday. Like you're doing this because you love it. And you're doing this because it's fun. And you're doing this because it helps you in some way. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's not going to be the end of the world. The world doesn't stop turning because you have a bad workout. It doesn't mean you're a crappy runner if you can't finish your run, or you decide you don't even want to go out and run. Like I've had runs where I get fully dressed, I take my fuel and I head out the door and I turn right back around and I go inside. And I have to just, right? Like it happens. And I just have to remind myself, like, that is a win in my book because I chose my emotional well-being and I chose to listen to my body versus pushing myself that might end up taking me to a place where I no longer want to run and love to run. Like my ultimate goal is to love running and love what I do in my free time as long as possible, right? Like this is the time that I'm not working. I'm not getting paid to do this. I don't have to do this. It's not chores. Like this is something I'm choosing to spend my free time doing. If I don't love it and I'm not doing it to build that love on it, then why am I doing it?
Yeah. And keeping that mindset, because one, it prevents the PRs from overruling our lives, right? As as someone who's run for a long time, I have PRs that I will never. Well, I have PRs that I'll never touch again. I'm never hitting my mile PR ever. But I also have PRs where it's just like, all right, yeah, I can go after this. I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reminding ourselves that we don't get wrapped up in those PRs and that a bad race is not the end of the world. And those sorts of mentalities, that's where it gets tough.
And that's why I feel like running has taught me how to fail. Considered myself a perfectionist, an aspiring good enoughiest, and running has taught me how to fail, and that the world doesn't stop. There is always something to be celebrated. And even if there isn't, you get 24 hours to be sad or to be, either celebrate for 24 hours and then get back to work, or 24 hours to be upset about whatever you need to be upset about. And then we're back at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's taught me that failure is okay. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if I missed my I had a summer of 5Ks and I was trying so hard to get sub 19. It didn't happen. I failed 17 times. I did so many 5Ks over the summer, and nobody thinks I'm less of a runner for it. Nobody, the world didn't stop. I didn't die. Everything is fine. And it taught me to how to be upset for a moment, but then accept that I worked really hard, be proud of that, and move on.
And to bring that mentality and allow it to guide us as we move forward, but also to guide us in community. Because one of the things I always think about is for folks who are at the front of these races, they have a responsibility to care for the folks who are at the back, right? And I often think about this as someone who has run, sub 25Ks. And I realized this as I was directing a race a few weekends ago, is we have these folks who are coming in 16, 17, 18 minutes. And then I'm like, man, let's get all these folks. And they're helping a lot of these folks to get in there because they know, I'm sure, what that feeling is like to not have either for folks, even for folks who may be PRing at 30 minutes or 35 minutes, or, folks who are just having a crappy day and aren't doing well. And the people, especially the people at the front, knowing what that feels like knowing what sort of that nature of failure feels like. And I think that's one of the ways that we can build. I often think about it. We can build from the elites to the back, and to care about every individual in the midst of that, and to make sure that every individual kind of has that feeling. When I was directing the race, I was cheering for that first person, and then I was cheering super hard for that last person.
Oh yeah,
both of them did a 5K, and what that means for folks is immeasurable.
Yeah,
in how they see their lives.
I want one of my goals is I want to be that person that you don't feel like you have to dumb your accomplishment down for.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I have had it where I'm talking to someone who ran, maybe they won the 5K, right? So they're running a 14 something. And I'm super happy about my PR with a 1930. And I'm oh yeah, I PR'd. Oh, it's just a 1930. And it's I want people to feel they can come up to me and be yeah, I got a 35. I did a 35-minute 5K. It's my PR. Heck yeah. And I want them to feel I'm going to celebrate, and I'm going to think that is the coolest thing in the world, because I do. And I want to, I want to exude that. I want people to feel that. And I love, my favorite thing in the world is when our team goes to races and we go out there with our little boom box, and we have now we have a megaphone, and we've got all of our little jingles, and we are just screaming at the top of our lungs. And I actually get messages to the Side Track Club's Instagram saying thank you so much. Thank you. It was noticed, and it meant a lot, and it kept me going. And I'm I just love seeing that. And it doesn't, and again, it doesn't matter if it's the first person to go through or it's the last person to go through, running anything at any distance and either completing it or PRing it or having a blast while doing it. I'm planning on running Boston in the spring, and I'm going out there just to have fun. And that seems a really weird concept for people, but I'm not going out there to race. I'm going out there to have fun. And that in itself is an accomplishment. Is to do something purely for fun and to enjoy what you're doing is still something to be so celebrated. And like, that is something that I wish like I could instill in every runner that I meet, every person, in everything that they're doing. Like, there is an accomplishment in doing something just for fun, in doing something competitively, and in just finishing something. Like, there is a way to celebrate all of those, and they all deserve equal celebration.
Well, and there's space for all of those to come together too, right? Yeah. Because it's hard to sometimes look at professional athletes and think, well, what can I as an average runner learn from them? Mm-hmm. And when I look at a lot of many of these professional runners in our, in the current iteration of track and field and the marathon and everything like that, is that, you can see the folks who are genuinely enjoying what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they get to do it for a living, which would honestly be great. I'd love to get paid to run for a living.
Yeah, it would make my life easier, right?
but you can genuinely tell that they're enjoying it. And yet, they're still, and they're putting in these fast times. Mm-hmm. And they're also not allowing themselves to get judged by the fast times. They're enjoying it. I think of like Emma Bates. Like, Emma Bates is one of the greatest ones that does this. You look at some of her Instagram stuff from these races, and if it's a bad race, like she'll get, she gets like that mopey side, but then she's also just like, but look at all these awesome things that also happened in the midst of this race. And you can tell like it's an actual fun experience for a lot of these people. And I think when we bring that same feeling, we can show, even from, what folks would see as a faster side, that this is not the only way that a runner can look, act, behave, but, you can do awesome and amazing things too. It's leading from that perspective at the front, I think, is like the greatest thing that we can offer to these communities.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So, and like I said, like it is a learning curve. Like, as someone who is building like a run group and semi leading it, right? Like, I do have the captains who lead it for me, but like, it is a learning curve. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I'll be the first one to admit it. Like, there are things I am learning about when it comes to like inclusivity and, being inviting and welcoming to everyone. Like, there's so many things to learn, and there's so much feedback to take in, and, we're all just doing the best we can. But yeah, like if you're doing it just from a good place, like you truly are leading or building the community from like a good place, you genuinely want the best for everyone, like you're doing something right. Like it's going to come into place, like whether it takes a little bit of time, like it's going to come into place, And
to have that attitude is probably one of the best things that we can bring. So let's hit these end of podcast questions and see. All right, let's learn a little bit more about Mac. What is your favorite distance to run?
All right. Well, this will be a big giveaway. I have only ever run a 5K and a marathon. So like even when I did my half, I did a bunch of miles before and after because it was part of my training. I've never raced it, but I truly do love the marathon. I love it. I think you get comfortably uncomfortable. There's a lot of stuff chilling. You get a whole bunch of, it's kind of like a little mini tour of the cities you're in. You get to eat a lot, which I love. Like the whole time is basically just a feast of gels and candy. And you also get to meet people because you can actually talk. Well, at least I can typically, my pace, I'm talking to people around me, which is super fun, and meeting people. So I really do love the marathon.
Erin is going to laugh so hard at this because she's like, you got to do a marathon. I'm like, no, I'm good. Nope. No marathons here. I can explore a city doing a half.
I know, but there's just something about a marathon where it's like, it doesn't really suck until you get to the very end. Like, and then it only sucks for a tiny amount of time, but like there is, it's just like, I don't know. I love it too, because it almost puts everyone, it's kind of like trail running. Like it puts everyone on a pretty even field, right? Like the people you see coming in at like a sub-3 marathon, and like, I'm working on trying to get to 3:10. It's like, so many things can happen in the course of 6.2 miles that like you could be in the best shape of your life. You could be like in 2:45 shape, but you go out there and you might hit a 3:15 or you might hit a 2:30. Like there's just so many things can happen. It's like a choose your own adventure. I don't know. I just love it. I truly do love it.
I mean, it is that like you find something and there's just that enjoyment in it.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite post-run food, snack, meal? What are you getting after that long run or just after any run?
Oh, okay. I always immediately want to chug a Coke Zero and a coffee. Like I'm big on that. But then I typically I do a lot of my morning runs. And again, my races are in the morning. I love a croissant sandwich. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Right?
That does sound good.
So good. It's nice carbs. There's some protein in it. The cheese. Yeah. It's good.
All right. And last, give our listeners a reason to join their local run club or group.
Oh, gosh, there's a million reasons. Step out of your comfort zone. Like, you don't know, the people you meet there are going to change your life. I promise you. The people you meet at your local run club will change your life. And feeling like you belong somewhere and you have a community makes life more sunny. Like, everything I'm such a happier person now that I found a community again. And yeah, I promise you, they will change your life.
What, just amazing insight and helping us to see a little bit more into, this area. This apparently Grand Rapids is like a gold mine of amazing run community. We're going to have to dig in more to this, Northern Michigan. I'm not actually sure that I know the geography of Michigan off the top of my head, actually.
It's definitely like not Northern Michigan, because Michigan goes all the way up to Canada.
Yeah.
It's in the middle. It's when it comes to the glove, it's like right near the pinky, like
okay.
Pinky to like wrist, in the middle. I would say middle, mid-mish maybe.
All right. From middle-ish Michigan. Oh, Mac, thank you so much for joining for this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Y'all, when I say this was a great episode, it was a great episode. I so much enjoyed hearing Mac's perspective on what this looks like, on what it looks like for us to be in community together, for us to push one another, not to be like other folks, but to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and what it means for runners from the front of the pack to the back of the pack, no matter where you are. Thinking about that inclusive nature of running. I mean, you hear it from Mac, like we can hit our own goals while also participating, being active, and building thriving running communities by keeping aware of what we look like, how we're acting, how we're behaving with one another. And so, I mean, I appreciated this perspective that really got me thinking about a lot of these different ways, these different areas that we are in community with one another. And even more so, how we're building community that transcends running, because a lot of times our running can be limited. And so to completely surround our entire identity with running often can come at the expense of having identity, even with our running friends, that doesn't involve running. And so I appreciated the perspective and everything that she brought to this conversation. I want to thank you for hanging out with me here on Run, Build, Grow. If you have a great story, I'd love to hear it. Email me at andrew@runninrev.com and we can get you booked for a podcast recording. And don't forget, connect with me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Strava, Substack. You'll find those links in the show notes. I publish and put content all over those places. If today's episode gave you a spark, don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, or head over to runbuildgrow.com to catch every podcast. You can go back and listen to the catalog. And even if you subscribe, have future episodes just automatically pop up in your feed. Got an extra minute? Jump on to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick rating or review. If you're on Spotify, drop a rating and a comment on this episode and other episodes you listen to. It's a simple way to help others discover the show and even let me know what's resonating with you. And here's the deal. If you leave a review, I'll give you a shout out right here in the next episode. Want to go the extra mile? Support the podcast and keep it growing strong by heading to buymeacoffee.com/RunninRev. Whether it's a one-time tip because you just absolutely enjoyed this episode, or if you want to become a regular supporter and a monthly member supporter of this podcast, every contribution helps this community grow on and off the run. Thanks for being here and for being part of this journey. Until next time, go crush it out there. And as always, make every mile count. I want to thank you for hanging out with me here on Run, Build, Grow. If you have a great story, I'd love to hear it. Email me at andrew@runninrev.com and we can get you booked for a podcast recording. And don't forget, connect with me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Strava, Substack. You'll find those links in the show notes. I publish and put content all over those places. You know, if today's episode gave you a spark, don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or head over to runbuildgrow.com to catch every podcast. You can go back and listen to the catalog, and even if you subscribe, have future episodes just automatically pop up in your feed. Got an extra minute? Jump on to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick rating or review. If you're on Spotify, drop a rating and a comment on this episode and other episodes you listen to. You know, it's a simple way to help others discover the show and even let me know what's resonating with you. And here's the deal. If you leave a review, I'll give you a shout out right here in the next episode. Want to go the extra mile? Support the podcast and keep it growing strong by heading to buymeacoffee.com/RunninRev. Whether it's a one-time tip because you just absolutely enjoyed this episode, or if you want to become a regular supporter and a monthly member supporter of this podcast, every contribution helps this community grow on and off the run. Thanks for being here and for being part of this journey. Until next time, go crush it out there. And as always, make every mile count.